She came to the ER in tears but had no idea her life was about to change forever, and not just in the way she feared, but in a way she never imagined. Olivia Martinez, 28 years old, a single mother of 2 small children, stumbled through the hospital's automatic doors holding her side and gasping through sobs that seemed to tear from the deepest part of her soul, not caring that her eyes were red, that she had left the house in a hurry with mismatched shoes and no jacket, or that the people in the waiting room had turned their heads toward her with that familiar mix of curiosity and detached concern. She was in pain, real, consuming, unbearable pain. But even worse than the physical agony was the fear clawing at her heart, the fear of what would happen to her children if she didn't make it through whatever this was, because she had no family, no backup plan, no savings, just her and her babies against the world since the day their father walked out and never looked back. And for the last 3 years she had fought with everything she had, working 2 jobs, skipping meals so her kids could eat, patching holes in their shoes instead of buying new ones, telling them bedtime stories with a smile even when she was too tired to keep her eyes open. But tonight, she couldn't fight anymore, and it terrified her, because she knew she couldn't afford to fall apart, couldn't afford to be weak, yet here she was, at the front desk of the ER, clutching the counter for support, whispering, "Please, help me," while a young nurse named Clara, who had been on her feet for 14 hours straight, looked up and saw not just another patient, but a woman unraveling, a mother holding herself together by sheer will, and something about the way Olivia stood there, trembling but still trying to be polite, hit Clara in a place she didn't expect, so she rose without hesitation and said, "Come with me," gently taking Olivia's arm and guiding her past the line of waiting patients, past the noise, past the chaos of the ER, into a small room where she could breathe, where someone would finally pay attention to her pain. And as Olivia collapsed into the hospital bed, tears streaming down her cheeks, she whispered again, "My kids. I left them with a neighbor, I just need to make sure I'm okay, I can't leave them," and Clara, pressing a comforting hand to her shoulder, said, "We'll take care of you first, and then we'll make sure everything else is okay too," though Olivia didn't fully believe her, because life had never worked out that way, not for people like her, not for women who were barely hanging on, who went unnoticed until they broke. And as a doctor named Nathan Jameson walked into the room moments later, clipboard in hand, brows furrowed with concern, Olivia braced herself for what she knew would be bad news, because good news never came in small, sterile rooms with beeping machines and fluorescent lights that made your skin look as tired as your soul felt. And after a short examination and a rush of lab tests, Dr. Jameson returned, sitting down beside her in a quiet, steady voice that didn't match the panic in her chest, saying, "Olivia, you have internal bleeding. It's serious, but we've caught it in time. If we act quickly, we can fix it." And though his words were meant to reassure, Olivia's heart sank as she thought of her babies, her rent due in a week, the job she might lose if she took too long to recover, the groceries she hadn't yet bought, the birthday party she'd promised to throw with dollar store balloons and homemade cake, and suddenly she was crying again, not just because of the pain, but because she was overwhelmed, because she was tired. Because no one had held her and told her it was okay to not be strong all the time, and for a moment, Dr. Jameson sat there in silence, watching the tears roll down her cheeks before he gently said, "You're not alone in this, Olivia. You don't have to be," and those words, so simple and unexpected, struck her in a place that had long gone numb, because no one had told her that in years, not since her mother died, not since she was left to raise 2 children without a partner, not since the world had taught her that kindness came with conditions and that help was something you had to earn or beg for. But here was this stranger, this doctor, offering compassion without judgment, and though Olivia didn't quite believe in miracles, part of her wanted to believe in him, because something in his eyes said he meant it, and so, when the nurses came to prep her for surgery, she whispered, "Okay, I trust you," even though trust was something she rarely gave anymore, and as she was wheeled into the operating room, her thoughts drifted to her children, Luca and Mia. And she whispered their names like a prayer, like a promise, like a vow that she would fight for them with every breath left in her body. And hours later, as the sun rose outside and the chaos of the ER slowly quieted, Olivia opened her eyes in the recovery room, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling, unsure if she was alive or dreaming, until Clara's face appeared beside her, smiling softly, saying, "You did great, Olivia. "You're going to be okay," and something about the kindness in her voice made Olivia cry again, this time from relief, and when Dr. Jameson came in to check on her, he handed her a note written on a sticky pad, the same kind used for prescriptions, but instead of medicine, it contained a phone number and a short message that read, "If you ever need help, a ride, or even just someone to talk to, call me. You don't have to do this alone." A message so small, yet so powerful that Olivia held it to her chest like a lifeline, not knowing that it would mark the beginning of a friendship, a mentorship, and eventually, something even deeper, because over the weeks that followed, as she healed and returned home, Dr. Jameson and Clara didn't disappear like most people did after the crisis passed. Instead, they checked on her, brought groceries, played with her kids, offered job resources and legal advice for child support, even found her a spot in a local single mother support group, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, Olivia began to change, not because her life suddenly became easy, but because for the first time, she felt seen, supported, and safe, and that made all the difference. And months later, as spring bloomed and her children laughed in a park near their new affordable apartment, Olivia sat on a bench beside Dr. Jameson, now simply Nathan, holding a thermos of coffee he'd brought her, smiling at the thought of how far she'd come, and when he turned to her and said, "You've always had this strength, Olivia, we just helped you see it," she nodded, tears welling in her eyes again, but this time they weren't from fear or pain, they were from gratitude, from healing, from love, not the romantic kind, though that too would blossom slowly and honestly, but the kind of love that says, "I've got you," the kind that shows up when it counts, the kind that changes everything. And as Olivia watched her children run through the grass, their laughter like music on the wind, she knew in her bones that she had survived not just because of medical care, but because of something far rarer. A moment of unexpected kindness in a world that too often turns away, a hand held out when she was falling, a reminder that even in the darkest hour, someone might be standing by with a light, ready to say, "You're not alone," and that was the moment her life truly changed.